The times they are a-changin', circumstances change, preferences change, life happens. And sometimes life happens enough to warrant selling your bike. But what if you made modifications to that bike? What if some of those modifications were done yourself? And what if you made video after video after video explaining and showing all of those modifications? And do you think all those mods actually add value to it? I mean, this bike is much better than it was when I received it. It is faster, it's quicker, it's cooler, but contrary to popular belief, all of these mods actually kind of tank the value. And where I am with this bike in particular, it's basically unsellable. We have a lot to undo. Yep, it's finally time to get rid of the RTR here, and it's not like I'm closing up shop or stopping with the videos or anything like that. It's actually quite the opposite. I've got too many! And also remember that this bike was obtained with two specific goals in mind. First was to take this RTR Lite and make it better and faster than the current RTR Sport for less than the cost. And the second, in a joking but slightly hopeful way, was to get Electro Co's attention to maybe start up some kind of sponsorship relationship so that I could be able to see and review and test some of the cool bikes and products that they've been putting out. And we were really successful with that first goal, getting this thing faster than the current RTR Sport for under $1,000, but then failed miserably on the second goal. In retrospect, maybe constantly poking fun at them and telling you not to buy their products was probably not the smartest idea. Austin, if you're watching this, I promise you I will say whatever you want me to say. Just reconsider and reply to my email. Although on immediate second thought, I think it's probably for the best, because this way I can be able to provide you my honest opinion and share that I'm not really a fan of their model, locking you into their ecosystem and all. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about getting rid of this bike. So why do I say that this bike is unsellable? Well, I'm sure you've heard this before, but mods don't actually add value. You can throw insane amounts of money into this bike, but dumping hundreds or even thousands of dollars into a bike does not mean that Joe Schmo is gonna pay you those hundreds and thousands of dollars back. And this is really because as a potential buyer, I don't know how well you put those mods on. And as a buyer, assume the worst. Assume parts were missed, assume things were not done right. So knowing that, as a seller, I want to eliminate that thought process by putting this bike back as close to as it was when I pulled it out of the box for the first time. And as a bonus, again, as a seller, I would be able to list this bike in stock form basically for the same as I would be able to a modded bike, maybe a couple $100 less, but then after the fact, I have all these parts that I can either use again or sell separately. So we'll put the bike back to stock, and later in the video, I'll show you how I go about selling a bike so that it actually sells, so stick around. As you can probably see, there is a lot to take off and change with this thing, so I guess we'll go front to back, starting with the front brakes. Now is probably a good time to mention that I keep all of my stock components. The reason why I do this is for this exact reason, or maybe I put on a modified part that I'm actually not too thrilled about, so I want to keep the stock part around as much as possible in case I need to throw it back on. This is also a good time to mention that if you don't have your stock parts available, then I don't recommend doing this, because there's no point in getting brand new OEM stock parts just so that you can slap it on a bike that you're going to get rid of. Well, that's the first mod pulled off, which I think was the last one that I did on the RTR. Not only that, but I added a brake rotor in the front that's bigger for the Supermoto setup and a brake light so that you can actually see when I'm braking. But now it's time to put on the OEM one. And actually, not quite yet, because in addition, in order to put this on, we have to take the front wheel off because, again, that rotor is much bigger. It actually doesn't fit with the OEM stuff. So we might as well just swap that out as well. And since we had to take the front tire off, switching gears a little bit and tackling actually one of the first projects that I did on this bike, which was the Supermoto conversion. And because I went from a 14 down to a 12 in the front, I just replaced the wheels and tires entirely. So we can just move this to the side, yikes, and just replace it with the old OEM stuff. It has the OEM everything in here, OEM rotor. I have the OEM spacers laying around. This is gonna be the easy part of the Supermoto deconversion. I'm really not looking forward to the rear, which is why I'm probably gonna put that off to the very last bit. Okay, back to the front brakes. Actually, not quite, because there's a few other accessories on the handlebars that I don't need anymore and just want to take off, so we're going to take that off first, then we can put the front brake together. Moving right along to some of the electrical modifications that we've done to this bike, because we had a headlight, we've had a taillight, a brake light, and all of that kind of culminates up here on the handlebars. So far, we already have a couple of those things just dangling, but might as well just rip them out entirely, including this headlight, get underneath some of the plastics finally, and tearing all that out. Carefully tearing all that out, I might add. I'm telling you guys, if you ever do an electrical project on your bikes, use these connectors. They are really cheap. You can get them on Amazon. They're waterproof, and as you'll see, they're really handy, especially if you have an Electro Co product. Since the next few steps are gonna involve a lot more electrical stuff because I didn't just add headlights to this, I changed absolutely everything inside of here. So I think it's probably best that we take out the battery, and this battery is actually a really unique one. So I actually believe that this battery right here is a 1 of 1. As you know, the RTR Lite comes standard with a 60 volt battery, but I wanted more than that, so I made this a 72 volt 25 amp hour battery with the help of Amorg. Amorg makes batteries for all kinds of electric dirt bikes. However, they have been explicitly told by Electro Co not to make these batteries. I can say that because I have no affiliation with Amorg or Electro Co, and I don't care, and I'm pretty sure that I got this thing in before they actually caught on. Because if you ask Amorg now to make you a battery with the dimensions for the RTR, they're gonna flat out say no. So if you want a 1 of 1 battery, I got a 72 volt for sale. Let me know if you want it. Well, I kind of forgot about this panel right here. As you can see, I made some cuts because I had to accommodate the battery leads. That's not exactly something that I can replace. Maybe I should have ordered another plastic panel. Thankfully, Electro Co has a lot of OEM replacement parts, but I think it's gonna be fine. It's whatever. And with that removed, you can see the main enchilada. This was replaced with a far driver controller, and I believe this was the first ever to be replaced with a far driver controller. I claimed as much online, and a few people were calling me out saying that they did that a long time ago, but then I asked for pics and it never happened. So if you've done this before, let me know. I'm really interested to see people that actually modify these bikes beyond something that Electro Co will sell you. I think we've torn down enough. It's time to build up again with the stock components, starting with the bracket here that actually holds the stock controller. I had to pull that out because the far driver was just too dang big. Now that the bracket is back in and secure, we can throw in the controller so this bike can have some brains again. Next up, wiring harness. Then battery leads. Now, this right here is exactly why I said earlier, if you're gonna be doing any kind of electrical work, particularly on an Electro Co product, to get those waterproof Amazon connectors, because that's exactly the same connectors that Electro Co uses for all of their wiring harnesses. And that's why when I was building my custom wiring harness, I made sure to connect it up to the original components, so that way, if I ever needed to go back, it's click, 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 done. Whoops, I forgot to turn the mic on in this scene, but what I'm saying is that I need to take out the 12 volt system, which is in the back under the seat, as well as the taillight brake light combo. And now that we're into a time lapse, it doesn't look like I'm dubbing myself anymore. Well, except for this last bit where I think I say, looks like it was never even there. In the final stretch now of tearing things down before we build it back up in stock form, and we're basically left with the swing arm at this point, the motor and the rear wheel. And God, I'm gonna ignore that rear wheel again for now, but we're gonna take out the Socin motor here and replace it with the stock RTR motor. Now, normally I preserve all the stock components by either putting it aside and getting something completely different or modifying it in such a way that I could be able to reverse everything, but this motor right here is the exception. Not only is it painted gold and cut up in a few particular areas, can you tell where the chain was? I actually trimmed this down on the sides here so that it's actually shorter to accommodate this motor. It's not the end of the world though, because like I mentioned earlier, Electro Co is actually really good about providing OEM parts, so I can go on their website and order that specific bracket that I need, and it's not terribly expensive. So I'm gonna go order one of those and we'll pick it back up when I have it in hand. Well, I have the new one in hand, and comparing to the old one here, you can actually see just how much I really lopped off of this thing. It definitely would not have worked. But now I can simply take this and screw it onto the motor so we can slap it back into the swing arm where it belongs. And now with that motor where we want it, we can finish up the wiring and connect all the phase wires as well as the Hall sensor to the controller. So now at this point, this bike has every single connection that is needed in order for it to actually function. But before I go putting on some of the other pieces, like the body panels and reassembling this thing back to its stock form, I want to actually dust off this battery, put it in, connect it, turn on the key, and just make sure that everything works. It's been sitting around for a while and I don't want any surprises. Seems to work. Also, one other thing that I almost forgot about, which are the foot pegs right here. These are Sur-On style foot pegs, and they're from Motion Factory Racing, and these things are way too expensive and way too nice to keep on a bike that I'm getting rid of. So they definitely have to come off so we can put the stock ones back on. And if you like Motion Factory Racing products, use my code LexDFox on their website, gets you 10% off. All right. Time for the moment. we've all been hating for, which is changing out this rear tire. Now, while I've been doing everything else and procrastinating as long as I possibly could, I had this along with the knobby tire sitting out in the front yard because thankfully it's a really hot, really sunny day. That way this can be nice and pliable. Will that help? Probably not, but I'm gonna struggle on and find out anyway. Whew, that was a struggle, let me tell you. I didn't want to bore you with seeing all that struggle, and it's not like I gave up or took this to a shop or anything like that. Ignore the fact that I'm wearing different clothes. Anyway, time to throw it on the bike. Cherry on top is putting back on the old 35 chain, getting that all lined up and tightened up so it's ready to rip. We're down to one final step and then we're ready to list this thing for sale, which is depersonalization. That means getting rid of any and all stickers that are on this bike. I know that that might mean something to you. These stickers mean something to me, but it might not necessarily mean something to the seller. It's one less thing to put in the way of the seller in deciding whether or not to buy your bike, especially if you advertise that this bike has been on YouTube a lot. Now I think it's safe to say it's ready to rip.
And rip it we shall, one last time. This is just a shakedown for the most part. I want to make sure that all the stock parts that I put back on the bike are functioning and won't fall off. Also a nice reminder of just how surprisingly loud this bike is. That stock motor certainly has a whir to it. So system check, acceleration obviously works, brakes, they work. Speedo works. I don't know how accurate it is. It's probably as inaccurate as it was from the factory. Kind of a bittersweet moment, getting rid of the RTR. And I guess in a small way, I'll miss it. So now, let's get to listing.
Now time to get it ready for sale. So roll it out, put it in the sunlight, wipe it down a little bit if you need to, but you don't have to get it gleaming because pictures don't really translate to that. But make sure you take a lot of those pictures, get every single angle, both side profiles, and then like a 45-degree on each side. So minimum 6. And then with a bike like this, with a display, if there's any kind of mileage, put that on there, anything else that you think is relevant. Now about this time I was about to get into a bit more of generating the listing itself, putting a good description, setting a reasonable price, but surprisingly, I sold this bike within an hour. As you can see, I took pictures at about 2:30 and listed it a few minutes later. By 3 o'clock, I had my first message, and then by 6, the guy came by to see it, gave it a test drive, and rode it home. And the only reason he didn't come by sooner was because he had to stop at the bank first to pick up the cash. So I guess I was completely wrong. It turns out that this bike really wasn't unsellable, but this is a prime example of what I see far too often online, which is people selling their modded RTRs or modded RTRs, where all they really did was just change things like the grips and the seat cover and rip the front fender off and then price it at something that's at or even over the price of a brand new RTR. And I guess I could have priced it like that and maybe someone would eventually pay that price for it, but then I would also be dealing with the other pitfalls of selling anything online, which are the sheer number of flaky messengers, lowballers, and that one dude who always wants to trade you a PS5 and a BMX bike. So did I set the price too low? Maybe, but it's not just the cost of the bike, it's the cost of your time, like dealing with all those messages like I mentioned and dealing with the negotiation of the price itself. The guy I sold it to, by the way, didn't haggle. I got full asking price, and there's the added cost of it just being in the garage. And that was really the need in my case to let the RTR go. Since deciding to sell that bike, I have 2 more bikes coming my way for review, so stick around for that. The sub button's down there. I say, bring on the bikes.
No low ballers, please. I know what I got.